لن نكون على رأس تجربة مماثلة لتجربة العراق.
Good afternoon on this October 23rd. I'm Yumna Naufal. These are today's headlines. The alleged killer of Lebanese soldier Ali Sayed is arrested and 2 others killed in an army raid in northern Lebanon. The government receives demands from the Islamists holding 27 soldier and policemen hostage, but Health Minister Abu Fuad admits negotiations will be a lengthy process. And on the Turkish-Syrian border, U.S.-led airstrikes have killed more than 500 ISIS fighters as the battle for Kobani rages on. 2 men have been killed and 1 wounded as the Lebanese army raided a house in northern Lebanon allegedly inhabited by terrorist suspects. 1 soldier was also wounded in the raid. The wounded man, identified as Ahmed Salim Mikati by security sources, is suspected of being behind the beheading of the Lebanese soldier Ali Sayed while he was being held hostage by the extremist ISIS group. The apartment in the Diniye town of Asoun was suspected to be inhabited by a terror ring made up of Lebanese and Syrian gunmen wanted by authorities. Mikati was taken into an armored personnel carrier to a hospital while being kept under heavy military guard. Soldiers confiscated large quantities of weapons, ammunition, bombs, and explosive belts found in the apartment. Health Minister Abu Faour, not Abu Fuad, has said the government has received demands from the jihadists holding 27 Lebanese soldiers and policemen captive since early August. The minister spoke as the families of the captive servicemen reopened the highway linking Beirut and Tripoli after closing it for nearly 24 hours, demanding more efforts from the government to free them. Faour said the negotiations to return the hostages to safety were on the right track, but did not specify any details about the demands put forward by the militants from Jabhat al-Nusra and ISIS. He did admit that negotiations will be lengthy. It has been widely rumored that the Islamist militants would be willing to exchange the hostages in a prisoner swap with Islamist inmates in Rumiyeh. An action plan for the refugee crisis is expected to dominate the agenda of Lebanon's cabinet meeting at the Grand Sarai in downtown. Foreign Minister Jabran Basil said there is no controversy in the proposed plan to deal with the Syrian refugee crisis, and Social Affairs Minister Rashid Derbas expressed optimism before the session, saying he expected a consensus to be reached on the refugee issue. The social minister said that Lebanon will not accept any more refugees and will only provide humanitarian aid under special circumstances. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, representative to Lebanon, Ninette Kelly, says she believes that the Syria crisis has had a huge impact on Lebanon and that this has forced the country to stop accepting Syrian refugees.
We've seen a drastic reduction in the number of refugees that are coming to Lebanon, and the government has said they felt they had to take this measure because a country of just 4 million people, they could not take more than the 1 million refugees that they already are sheltering. And the Syria crisis has had a big impact on this country. It has affected its economic stability because of a loss of trade and investment, a decline in consumer confidence. But then you bring the pressure of additional people into a country whose infrastructure is already weak, and that provides added strain and pressure on water, on sanitation, waste management.
The body of Lebanese businessman George Obaji's body has been found in Cypriot territorial waters after his plane crashed on the way to Beirut. Search crews found wreckage belonging to the small aircraft after it vanished about 80 kilometers southeast of Larnaca yesterday. A German ship will transport the remains of the small plane back to Cyprus for investigation. The twin-engine Diamond DA-42 plane had taken off from an airport near the town of Paphos on Cyprus's western coast. Only Obaji and his Cypriot pilot were on board the plane. The proposal to extend the parliament's term enjoys the backing of half of Lebanon's Christians, according to Future Movement MP Ahmed Fatfat. His comments come in response to a question about the lack of Christian support for Parliament's extension. The Future Movement has been advocating for the extension of Parliament's mandate for months, but the party's Christian allies, the Kata'ib and Lebanese forces, have been more reluctant to voice support for the measure. The Free Patriotic Movement, the largest Christian-dominated party in the rival March 8 camp, has explicitly rejected the extension. Fatfat reiterated the Future Movement's argument that holding the elections would force the cabinet to resign, and due to the absence of a president, it would not be possible to form a new one. U.S.-led airstrikes in Syria reportedly have killed more than 500 jihadists in 1 month as fighting rages on in the embattled border town of Kobani. The town's Kurdish defenders have been holding out against an assault by the Islamic State militant group for more than a month, buoyed in a recent day by promise of Iraqi Kurd reinforcements and U.S. airdrops of weapons. The airstrikes have killed 553 people since their launch, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, including 464 ISIS fighters, 57 from Al-Qaeda Nusra Front, and also 32 civilians have been killed, including children and women. Now, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights relies on a wide network of sources inside Syria. After first focusing on Iraq, now the coalition has dramatically expanded its strikes in Syria, including on Kobani, which has become a crucial battleground in the fight against ISIS. Coming up next, Canada's Prime Minister says the Ottawa incident is a grim reminder that his country is not immune to terrorism. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the 4:20 o'clock news on Future TV. In Yemen, Houthi rebels have captured the town of Yarim, south of the capital Sana'a, further worsening fears of a full-out sectarian war in the country. Dozens of homes in the captured town were reduced to rubble, and rebels could be seen at checkpoints across the city. A tribesman of the Shia movement said a number of Houthi public committees had been set up in the region. The Houthi rebels, hailing from Yemen's Shia Zaidi sect, established themselves as a powerful opposition force after they captured the capital Sana'a last month. Since then, they have advanced in several of Yemen's regions, but they have met fierce resistance from Sunni tribesmen backed by Al-Qaeda. The UN Security Council is preparing to use sanctions against 5 people in Yemen for obstructing the country's democratic transition: former President Ali Abdullah Saleh, his son, and 3 Houthi leaders. 10 people have been wounded in an explosion outside Cairo University, among them police and civilians. The blast occurred as the last classes of the university ended in a square outside the college. 6 policemen and 4 civilians were slightly wounded and were transferred to hospitals. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. However, Islamic militants have been carrying out several attacks against police and soldiers, mainly in the Sinai region. A federal court in the United States has found the 4 Blackwater employees on trial for killing 14 unarmed Iraqis guilty on nearly every count. The 4 former employees of the security company Blackwater were on a trial for a mass shooting at Baghdad traffic circle in 2007 that outraged Iraqis and inflamed anti-American sentiment around the world. Paul Slow, Dustin Hurd, and Evan Liberty were convicted of voluntary manslaughter in connection with at least 12 deaths at Nisour Square, where the Blackwater unit had been attempting to clear the way for a U.S. State Department convoy. The Washington jury also found the 3 guilty of attempted manslaughter in connection with the wounding of at least 11 Iraqis at the site. The 4th guard, Nicholas Slatton, was found guilty of murder in connection with the first death at the circle. Slatton faces a life sentence on the murder charge, while the other 3 face at least 30 years in prison. Canada will not be intimidated by a pair of attacks that killed 2 soldiers this week. Prime Minister Stephen Harper said in an address to the nation, adding that security agencies will do everything needed to counter threats to the country. Earlier yesterday, a gunman attacked Canada's Parliament, with gunfire erupting near where Prime Minister Stephen Harper was speaking, and a soldier was fatally shot at a nearby war memorial. The gunman in the Parliament building was shot dead, and Harper was safely removed in incidents that may have been linked to Islamic militants.
For the second time this week, there has been a brutal and violent attack on our soil. Today, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of Corporal Nathan Cirillo of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. Corporal Cirillo was killed today, murdered in cold blood, as he provided a ceremonial honor guard at Canada's National War Memorial. That sacred place that pays tribute to those who gave their lives so that we can live in a free, democratic, and safe society. Likewise, our thoughts and prayers remain also with the family and friends of Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent, who was killed earlier this week by an ISIL-inspired terrorist. Tonight, we also pray for the speedy recovery of the others injured in these despicable attacks. Fellow Canadians, we've also been reminded today of the compassionate and courageous nature of so many Canadians, like those private citizens and first responders who came to provide aid to Corporal Cirillo as he fought for his life. And of course, the members of our security forces in the RCMP, the City of Ottawa Police, and in Parliament, who came quickly and at great risk to themselves, to assist those of us who were close to the attack. Fellow Canadians, in the days to come, we will learn more about the terrorist and any accomplices he may have had. But this week's events are a grim reminder that Canada is not immune to the types of terrorist attacks we have seen elsewhere around the world. We are also reminded that attacks on our security personnel and on our institutions of governance are, by their very nature, attacks on our country, on our values, on our society, on us Canadians, as a free and democratic people who embrace human dignity for all. But let there be no misunderstanding. We will not be intimidated. Canada will never be intimidated.
U.S. pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson says it is ready to start testing their Ebola vaccine on humans. According to the firm's chief scientific officer, Paul Stoffels, Johnson & Johnson aims to produce at least 1 million doses of its two-step vaccine next year. The EU is also expected to announce 200 million euros of funding to develop new Ebola vaccines, drugs and diagnostic tests. The World Health Organization is hoping that tens of thousands of people in West Africa, including healthcare workers, can start receiving Ebola vaccines in January as part of a large-scale clinical trial.
What we know today, it works very well in animal models. Now we are testing whether it is safe, and we'll also measure in the blood whether it has immunogenicity against Ebola. We can test that from the blood samples of those volunteers, and that will show whether it will work. So at this moment we are not sure yet that it will work, but we are confident because of the animal experiments that we have efficacy. That's why we bring it forward. Well, I hope we'll be able to have the second quarter of next year a certain number of vaccines available in West Africa, but that will depend on the collaboration with the WHO and the different aid institutions on how we get that deployed. At this moment we're working together across the industry to find a way to accelerate as fast as possible. Often our industries work together to come to solutions, but in this case Glaxo has their vaccine which is progressing, we have our vaccine combination which is progressing, and we work together with the governments to take down the barriers and increase the speed with which we can develop.
Another White House incident: a man jumped the fence and was attacked by Secret Service dogs before being arrested, according to the Secret Service. Video showed Secret Service agents surrounding the man on the north lawn of the White House, which was put on lockdown. The incident comes roughly a month after an intruder armed with a knife scaled the White House fence and made it inside the executive mansion, raising questions about security levels at the heavily guarded complex and spurring the resignation of then Secret Service Director Julia Pearson. The man climbed the fence around 7:15 local time and was apprehended shortly thereafter. The lockdown was lifted shortly before 9. The latest White House security breach happened the same day a gunman attacked Canada's Parliament in Ottawa. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. The alleged killer of the Lebanese soldier Ali Sayed is arrested and 2 others killed in an army raid in northern Lebanon. The government receives demands from the Islamists holding 27 soldiers and policemen hostage, but Health Minister Abu Faoud admits negotiations will be a lengthy process. And on the Turkish-Syrian border, U.S.-led airstrikes have killed more than 500 ISIS fighters, and the battle for Kobani rages on. Those are your Thursday headlines live here on Future Television. Join us again tomorrow for us making headlines here and around the world. Take care.
لن نكون على رأس تجربة مماثلة لتجربة العراق.